All right, we're talking Clone Wars. Jeff Lowe, Robbie Fox, KenJac here. Episode 7, we are almost two-thirds of the way through the final season of Clone Wars. Not the final Star Wars animated series we're going to get. We know that already. It's been teased, so don't worry about that. But yeah, we're almost done with the majority of Clone Wars. We're over halfway done. What do we think about this episode? I think there's going to be some interesting comments. Again, I think this arc is not being particularly very well received. I think it'll set up some stuff we like, but it sounds like people aren't loving what we got here.
Yeah, this hasn't been my favorite. I thought things were really going to pick up in this episode, and then they sort of it looked like they were about to for a second, but which we'll eventually get to.
Yeah.
They just go in a circle. They end where they started. So I don't know. It felt like another filler episode, which I didn't want a ton of when we have a shortened season as it is.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think out of this arc, this was the best episode, but because it's the last of this grouping,
Correct.
I'm just so sick of it, and I want to see us move on at this point. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's the battle. I think, and I saw some comments about it on Twitter, the Star Wars Reddit. They were like, honestly, this was probably the best episode of the arc, but at this point, it comes at the wrong time. It's wrong place, wrong time.
Yes, exactly.
I think this is the start of maybe the arc. People would have liked it more. With that said, there are some pretty big things here. One big reference, callback, and then a tease ahead to not just this season, but probably other Star Wars things. So we'll get to that. We're going to do things a little differently today. But we are going to start the same as we usually do. We're going to break down the episode. The moral was who you were does not define who you are. And a lot of that has to do with the Jedi. And this is kind of the big callback. It starts out basically they're in the cell on Obadiah. The Pike Syndicate has them locked down from the previous episode. They got caught because they dumped the spice. They tried to steal some money from them. And Trace and Rafa are revealing to Ahsoka that they don't like the Jedi for a very particular and specific reason, and that has to do with their parents' death. The Jedi, they claim, in their point of view, the Jedi are evil. They claim that the Jedi are the reason why their parents died. I actually just realized that that's basically what they said. That their parents died because of the Jedi's incompetence. Basically, they refer to something that happened back in, I think it's the hostage crisis episode. I don't know where it falls in line now. I think on Disney Plus, it's this 22nd episode of season 1, but I think the way it aired was different. It's very confusing. Let me just put it that way. Star Wars The Clone Wars is released and put online in a confusing way, but it's the episode titled Hostage Crisis, a very well-known Clone Wars episode where the senators are taken hostage. Cad Bane is there. They take Zero the Hutt, who was a big character from the Clone Wars movie. They say that Cad Bane, they refer to Cad Bane as a red-eyed bounty hunter, right? They don't actually say Cad Bane by name. They say Zero the Hutt was broken out of prison, and there's a ship in this pursuit that was shot and lost control, and the Jedi were trying to move this ship away from a landing platform that had civilians and had people on it, and in the process, it slammed into a wall, and it killed people. And it turns out that the people that died from this were Trace and Rafa's parents. And they say that a Jedi, a green-skinned Jedi in a dark robe, who I believe would be Luminara Unduli. That's who people have.
That's who I was thinking. Yeah, I was going to ask you guys.
A lot of connections to Ahsoka, which we'll get to. Came over to them and said, I had to make a choice. This is a choice they made, and the Force will be with you, which means nothing to people who just lost their parents and who aren't Jedi.
Really.
That's like, and you got to realize, to everyone else, the Jedi are just like these crazy religious nutbags. So that's like a person coming up to him being like, don't worry, Mormon Jesus will be with you, and just like running away after killing your parents. It's like, well, no, fuck you.
Yeah, it's
really a weird thoughts and prayers.
It is. It's a shitty thoughts and prayers because, again, they're not Jedi. They lost their parents. It's not helpful. It's just. Yeah, Luminara Unduli, not a great Jedi, because let's also remember that her Padawan was Barriss Offee, who
she bombed the temple and then blamed it on Ahsoka, and which made Ahsoka leave the temple in the first place.
Yeah, so Barriss Offee is responsible for the reason why Ahsoka is where she is, and I'd have to imagine that the Master a little bit responsible for that. Luminara Unduli killing people with ships, being an asshole, offering.
At this point, though, hey, that's sort of an interesting thread. Like, show me more about this fuck up Jedi.
She basically gave her card, like, hey, here's my card. Here you go. Thoughts and prayers.
And then don't forget, Luminara Unduli, like after all this, during Rebels, they use her corpse to lure in Jedi that weren't killed during Order 66, and then they kill them.
Unreal.
And that's like the opening plot to Rebels. That's how the Inquisitor, I believe, finds the what do you call it? The tattoos for Rebels. I forget their names.
She's like the Steve Urkel of the Jedis.
Yeah, just a lot of bad shit. Yeah, Luminar and Dooley, bottom of the list of the power rankings for Jedi, and this had a lot of Civil War and Batman versus Superman vibes. This conversation reminded me a lot of saving Cap in Civil War and then blowing up a hospital, basically, right? Like that's just what it ended up being. So it has a lot of that like collateral, like the good guys, are they the good guys? Because the damage done in their fight is a lot more than you think, and it's not always good. So that was interesting that the parents do tie to that Rafa and Trace tie back to something that Ahsoka was not involved with. She's not involved in that episode, but something that she's very well connected to. So that's probably the second most interesting part of the episode. Rafa is eventually tortured. There's a kind of a cool Easter egg with the torture there. Trace tortured as well, or attempted to torture her, and she escapes. She escapes the cell. She then runs down the hallway, very Han Solo-esque. When Han Solo runs down in A New Hope and he's yelling, and then he runs into the stormtroopers, which
the entire like bickering about who's saving who really is so A New Hope, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it has a lot of Han Solo vibes, which I thought was cool because these characters in general, they've done some Han Solo Easter eggy things, which is pretty neat. They then both escape. Ahsoka uses the Force to escape the cell, wakes up Rafa. I was like, how'd you get out of here? And Ahsoka's been hiding her Jedi powers the whole time. They then escape even further out of that whole prison area. She uses a Force jump, Ahsoka does, hides that as well. She's like, I'm more athletic than you think. They leave.
And they're starting to really doubt that too. They're like, I don't think that's possible.
Yeah, they're like, that's bullshit. There's some cool explosions, a lot of those rainbow explosions again, really cool animated effects. They take a pike and they force the pike to be cut in half because like this I guess
they do a Total Recall to him.
Yeah, this lift goes up and slices them in half when it hits the floor above. So pretty brutal death there. Ahsoka takes out a bunch of pikes in a watchtower and then uses the Force again to like basically disable the guards and lift one up into the line of fire as Trace and Rafa are shooting at them. So Ahsoka is doing a bunch of Force stuff and saving the day for everybody. She does all the work for the most part.
She got like the shit beat out of her in that tower too. It was like a John Wick fight.
Yeah.
She was just taking all those hits but still ended up winning at the end.
That was a great fight sequence, though. Really good.
Which begs the question, even if you're Ahsoka, and I don't know, maybe she has a lightsaber on her, we don't know. Even if you leave the Jedi, you don't get rid of your lightsaber. You still carry it.
I know. She had the lightsabers in the promo picture this week, so I really thought they were coming out this week, and they didn't.
Maybe she'll make them.
She's got to have at that point, you're like, fuck this. You just got to cut everyone down. Like, get out of here.
Between her and Kylo Ren chucking his into the thing and then showing up on Exegol and being like, fuck, I should have
my bad
taken that with me.
Just keep the thing.
And why didn't she use the Force on the guy she was fighting in the tower? Like, no one else is around. Like, this is the one time, like, hey, you like go fucking nuts.
Very Thanos-esque. It's like Thanos not using the stones to fight Hulk. It's like, whatever, I'll just beat him up myself. It takes out all the guards. It seems like they might be home free. They spot the ship that they need to leave on, but this beggar comes over and is like, hey, like, you got any credits? Like, nah, get out of here. And you're like, ah, shit. Clearly they should have given this guy credits. He's going to screw him over because later on, this beggar asks Pikes, like, hey, do you have credits? They say no, scram, and they have a hologram up of Ahsoka, Trace, and Rafa. He goes, you looking for those folks? Pay me something, I might tell you where they are. So the Pikes then find Ahsoka, Trace, and Rafa. They chase them down. There's a whole speeder chase, ends with a bit of a crash. KenJac, you noted kind of a crazy Easter egg with the crash.
Yeah, the guy who, like, in the speeder, when it blows up, he does like a tauntaun scream. Like,
really?
The dying tauntaun scream.
Yeah,
I thought it was the Wilhelm. I had my TV sort of low when it happened, and I was just like, I think that was Wilhelm's scream.
No, it basically sounded like a repurposed tauntaun. Yeah, we'll play it here. It's kind of crazy. So the speeder chase ends with a crash. Ahsoka's able to run off, but Trace and Rafa are cornered. And then up top, we see three. And we saw one teased earlier. They ran by one earlier. They ran by what looked like a cloaked Mandalorian. But now up top, watching down on Rafa and Trace being arrested, you see three Mandalorians in disguise. And they're noting one of the Mandalorians is like, not the Jedi we saw before. Like, yeah, I think so. Like, let's hope they don't compromise the mission. And then the main Mandalorian's like, well, let's remember we have a common enemy. We will get to that in a second. Not going to talk about that right now because there's a lot more to break down with that. So Mandalorians are there. That's a big tease to what's to come. Clearly, the Mandalorians are going to come into much bigger play in the next episode. Trace and Rafa are about to be executed. Ahsoka takes like one of the many ships, industrial ships and forklifts and construction ships down there, start shooting at them, and the Pikes outsmarted her. They're like, we brought them into the open. We knew we'd draw you out and corner you. So they're captured, and they just end up back in a cell again. They're just right back in which that was the part I was like, fuck, I don't like that. Because I was a little worried at one point. I'm like, I don't want them to just end up back in the cell. What was the whole point of this? I feel like there's a way to move that episode a little more and still have them cornered, but not just have them back in the jail cell. That felt... It wasn't pointless because you established a lot in the episode, but it did feel like almost like a waste.
Anticlimactic.
Yeah. It was a really anticlimactic end. It was just like,
super.
Man.
The vibe I got after this episode was sort of, and the last episode, reminiscent of the vibes I got after the early season 8 Game of Thrones episodes, where I was like, it was good. Yeah, it's going to be good. They're going to wrap it up and they're going to kill it at the end. But now, like, they need to wrap it up and kill it at the end.
See, the thing is I know this season's going to wrap up with a bang because we've seen it. We've seen the Darth Maul.
True.
We've seen the Siege of Mandalore. I think the disappointment, if it happens, will be I wish there was more of that. Like, we didn't get enough of it. So we'll see. Again, I'm not going to count because I think we've kind of just punted on this arc. But I believe the next one, because of the Mandalorians, we're going to get a little more action and more towards the storyline that we've all been kind of pumped for.
The idea of it, I think, is cool, right? Because you do get to see some of the stuff from Rafa and Trace's point of view, which is just like such an outsider of the world of the Jedi. Because like for us as viewers of obviously just the trilogies and shit, the Jedi are always shown as just the pure good guys who've never done anything wrong, anything like that. And Trace and Rafa give you that perspective of like, well, not to everyone else, which is like a kind of like a theme that you get a lot throughout Clone Wars. And I think in this, it's really good because you can not only get it from the outsider, but like you get now Ahsoka like intermeshing with them and getting a better view of herself as an ex-Jedi herself. So I think the idea of it is cool. It's just it's gone on too long, and we're in this one, especially being just like a flat circle and ending up right back where we started. A little bit boring.
You could have found out they didn't like the Jedi before. You could have found out about all that earlier, right? Like there's no reason to have waited. So it's kind of a bummer, and I think they could have done more with the characters. But we did get a pretty cool tease. So instead of doing like an audience questions thing, I just want to mainly focus on the Mandalorian connections today. So one of those Mandalorians was Bo-Katan. We saw that in the credits. You could recognize the voice as well. Very big figure. Bo-Katan at one point wields a darksaber. Going to have a lot of connections to the Siege of Mandalore, to Ahsoka, and likely Mandalorian. Also, Ursa Wren. First time we've seen Ursa Wren in the Clone Wars. She's the mother of Sabine Wren. We've seen Ursa in Rebels. So that's a huge connection because we haven't seen that gap totally bridged with new characters. Now we do. So Bo-Katan, Ursa Wren. We don't know who the other Mandalorian figure is. But that lends you to the big question here. Do you think one of them is the armorer in Mandalorian? Because it would kind of make sense knowing now that Ahsoka is going to be in the Mandalorian. Whether it's a flashback, whether it's going to be present day, because we believe Ahsoka should be alive during the Mandalorian based on what we've seen with Rebels. Because Ahsoka lives, all that shit.
Age-wise, does that work out, though? I don't know, because we don't know how old the Forge Master is, and so either she would have to be really young now, or she'd have to be not that young, I would guess, during Mandalorian. So
I'm going to assume Ursa Wren is rather young right now. That's my guess. I don't know what the Bo-Katan thing is. I can see Bo-Katan dying in the Siege of Mandalore. But I think whoever survives out of that, Ursa Wren, because of her age, because remember, she's rather nimble in the Mandalorian. She fucking beats the shit out of stormtroopers.
The stormtroopers.
And I think she's rather young here because Sabine is not that old in Rebels, and this is quite a ways before Rebels. So I just feel like I think the armor is definitely grizzled, and the armor may end up being Sabine Wren anyway, right? Like that may just have been Sabine. But I think there's something here. I think there's a connection here, and there's no coincidence that the Ahsoka news came out, and there was no denial from Lucasfilm. And it just, where there's smoke, there's fire, basically, I think, on this one.
I think that'd be cool.
I would, I'd love the tease, and I'd love the hint of maybe what's to come, right? Like
definitely. And the armorer is a character who, when we saw her mess up those stormtroopers in the final episode, and when she gave the little history of Baby Yoda, she knew his history. Mm-hmm. She knew the history of the Jedi a little bit. Like, it made me intrigued about her character more. Why does she have the Darth Maul type horns on her helmet? Was that part of Darth Maul's takeover of Mandalore? Was she in a clan
Yeah.
that he ran? Like, I want to know more about that. So I would definitely be all for Clone Wars Mandalorian crossover.
I'm going to land on the Ursa Wren thing now. I think Ursa Wren is going to end up being the armor, and I think that just or Bo-Katan. I think one of them, because I think you bring up a good point about the Maul horns on the helmet. They look very Darth Maul-esque, but also the awareness of Baby Yoda and the Jedi. And obviously Sabine knows Jedi in Rebels because she understands it. She's around it. She's obviously around with like Kanan and Ezra, so she knows the Jedi. But this is a more awareness of the Jedi, right? During the Clone Wars, like the Jedi are much bigger figures, and I think that understanding makes sense with how the armor talked about Baby Yoda.
We still haven't seen Maul yet, so presumably that could be fleshed out later.
I like the puzzle pieces are coming together there. They really are. That there's a lot of Mandalorian connections here. We might have some pretty fucking cool reveals for Mandalorian Season 2. A couple other quick things. Easter eggs. We once again see my favorite character, Snaggletooth, right in the beginning with moon boots. I really want to know if George loves or hates that. Like, if George calls up Dave Filoni, he's like, get that out of there. I don't like that. I said no.
I doubt George watches these things at this point.
I confirm moon boots, by the way. I zoomed in. He's wearing the moon boots. It's officially canon. We also see a Cad Bane reference. Will Cad Bane return? I don't know.
I hope so.
I don't think so.
All-time outlaw for Star Wars canon right now.
Yeah, I don't know if Cad Bane will return. I think we'll see Cad Bane somewhere.
I would like him to return.
Love his voice.
We do get a Cad Bane reference. We've said Walton Goggins should play Cad Bane. Get that baby Billy voice going on there, maybe in live action. Pikes. We didn't mention last week with the Pikes. They were in Solo, the Star Wars story. The Pike Syndicate was in Solo, which I did forget. We have seen them live action before. The Torture Droid is an 8D series droid, which is the droid you see torturing in Jabba's palace. When the droid's like, no, and they hit the feet and it steams up. That's the same droid. That one's 8D8. Is just
awful design.
Funny.
Think could barely fucking walk.
Terrible.
Yeah,
awful
really.
back pains. It looks like the droid has. Just like uncomfortable looking droid.
Designed with a hunchback.
They let Weequay and an Ithorian out, same species as Hondo and the same species as the Hammerhead. That's the Hammerhead species. And then we also see the beggar is a Gotal. So those are just a bunch of creatures we saw on Tatooine in the cantina. More original trilogy flashbacks. Always cool to see. And then finally, very much in the background, an alien I recognized, an Alean alien or an Alea alien. It's the same species as Rats Tyrell or Rats Tyrael. I don't know how to say it exactly, but it's one of the pod racers. It's the pod racer with like the family and the pod racer that slams and dies. In the cave in the Boonta Eve Classic in Phantom Menace. And if you watch the extended deleted scenes of the pod race, they like give the backstory on the family. And I looked up this character in Wikipedia. Apparently, they don't know if the character died right away, but no rescue crews searched during those races because of the crate dragons that live in those caves. Very deep cut Star Wars reference. That's the fucking skeleton. Yeah, so he just died, lost his family. But they have the species in the background there. That's really it. I think it was a simple episode. It was a lot of chases, a lot of fights, just to end up back in the same spot.
Very straightforward.
I'm curious how much they'll tie Mandalorian. I don't think they're going to, and I know they won't. They're not going to tie the Mandalorian down too much for this series. They're not going to make it a requirement to watch. But I think they're going to do the thing where if you see the character, if it means something to you, it's going to be awesome. And if it doesn't, it won't have any impact on how you take in the season, right?
Yeah, at least it won't detract from your viewing experience.
It's the Darksaber thing. They're going to show the Darksaber. They're not going to require you to know what it is. They're going to explain it to you. If it's important, they'll give you the rundown, and that's basically it. But if you get more, if you understand more, if you get the reference, it's just that much cooler. That's basically.
I'm so excited to see the Darksaber in season 2.
Me too, man.
Mandalorian season 2. I keep forgetting. Have they wrapped filming for sure on that?
I know some people have wrapped. I know for sure Gina Carano wrapped before this all went down, and she posted some things on Instagram that made me think that happened. But of course,
it was 4 weeks ago.
And
4 weeks ago. So that's the nice thing about Mandalorian. There could be reshoots, which is going to be tough to do with the quarantine, but you got to think there's still a decent chance we get Mandalorian season 2 this year, that it won't be delayed.
Yeah.
Sure fucking hope so.
Fingers crossed.
So we'll see. Next episode comes out next week. We'll have a breakdown. Make sure if you're on YouTube, hit subscribe, hit the like button, comment below. Who do you think the armor is in Mandalorian? Is it Ursa Wren? Is it Sabine? Is it Bo-Katan? Is it someone else? let us know there. We'll have another breakdown of Westworld on Monday. But a week from now, we'll do a Clone Wars breakdown of the final episode of this one arc. And then I think we kick into high gear, Revenge of the Sith. Pretty exciting. Pretty good stuff. Thanks again for Robbie and KenJac. I'm Jeff Lowe. Talk to you next time.